Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, the Clubhouse, Shipmate Self. I think this is maybe episode 9 or 10, so we're getting up there. We took a week off last week. Fun enough, Scott and I got to meet up in Waterloo and see the old Iowa, so that was great. But we're excited to be here tonight with two guys that both Scott and I really appreciate and respect. And tonight we're going to be talking a bit about marriage and kind of the pros, the cons, some of the things that have come up being married. So I'm going to dive right in tonight with these two guys that, I think Scott and I coached at CCU, which is really fun. And we'll start out with guys. Hey, what do you guys think are some of the easiest parts or most challenging parts, or maybe wonderful and kind of hard parts about being married?
You can go ahead, Caleb.
I knew it. I'll start with the positives. I don't know. I think the positive is, my wife is like truly my best friend. So being married to her allows us to do life together, and has evolved obviously into children and building a nice little family that we have. So I think that just doing life with someone that you truly just get along with, even, like I said before, we kind of stem back to just being friends first, and then it kind of grew from there. So marriage has just kind of allowed us to continue to do life together for, I don't know, over, including like dating and stuff, well over 10 years now. So yeah, that's it.
I'll echo that. As far as getting to do life with someone, right? Especially someone you like. That's always a plus, right?
Right.
I think, right out of the gates, I think marriage, living together, probably right when we got married, that was a big part. Where it's like, all right, didn't know what to expect as far as this. This is how you do life. This is how I do life, and now this is how we're going to do life, right? So I think that was something. It was a little bit of a challenge out of the gates of just what the dynamics of that look like. And then I think challenges. A lot of we got 3 kiddos, 2, 4, and 6, and I think that was that challenge in itself of just having, so we've been married 8 years and having kids for 6 of them. So I think a lot of the challenges come through that avenue of just what that looks like, and the way to go about your life with, okay, you realize how selfish you are. It's probably one of the biggest challenges of the dynamics of what go into that. I think have just been very eye-opening. You both don't want to change a diaper, but you also know that you love your spouse by going to change a diaper, right? And going to do the things that you can as a husband, I think. So kind of working through those challenges. But yeah, I think to echo what you said, Caleb, right there, hit the nail on the head as far as having someone to do life with.
Awesome. Caleb, anything on your side that you've noticed that's been kind of challenging?
Yeah, I think Rahul kind of hit it a little bit, but it's just finding the balance of finding personal time for yourself, and then also making sure that there's not too much of that, because you don't want to disengage from your marriage or your family. But at some points it, I know for me personally, it can get a little overwhelming at times, and I just kind of need to kind of retreat just for a little bit, regroup, and then kind of do that. So I think obviously it's a lot easier to do that when you're not you're not in a marriage, or you don't have a family. You spend most of your time in that state of just self, which is good. But when you become married and that sort of thing, you can kind of lose that a lot. And I think it's healthy for not only for me to do that, but for my wife to do that as well. Keep us, I guess, energized,
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I might do a follow-up question to this one, and this one might be a little bit therapist-esque kind of thing that I do. I'm wondering a bit about, often when we marry somebody, we choose somebody that might be a combination of maybe features of our mom and our dad, or a combination of both. And sometimes we bring into the relationship things that are good or challenging. I'm kind of wondering what you guys have noticed in terms of the relationship dynamics with your significant others.
Yeah, I think one thing with that is so my dad sold real estate. He had worked a lot, but he was made all the games, which is awesome. So I had a mom that stayed home, kind of did life for the kids and worked her butt off. But cook, clean, that was always something that she took ownership of, just loving on family and people. But so that was a part, going into marriage, and to that point, you think like my wife was like, I don't like to cook. That's fine. Like I didn't expect that, but it was just a different dynamic too, where it's like, it wasn't something I expected, for it to happen, but it was just one of those things too. It's like, so from like a role standpoint, kind of what you look for, but at the same time, I mean, she loves people, as much, if not more, than as far as where, as much to my mom and how she was. I think so that dynamic is something you always see. And, I think that's always a big dynamic of kind of seeing who you look for, what you look for. Faith has always been a big part too. As far as someone, are they sold out for the Lord, and what that looks like inside of marriage too. And one of the things that I heard one time is kind of one of the greatest witnesses you could be to anyone is your spouse. And which is tough because they see everything, right? You're like, shoot, what does that look like? But that's something I've seen with my wife and my mother as well, as far as having someone that was sold out for Lord, which was really cool to see. But
yeah. And so are you saying like you play a similar role to your dad in your marriage, or has that been different, or what have you noticed?
Yes and no. I think you look at, from she works as well, so that's something that we didn't have that dynamic. She probably would love to say, yeah, I'd love to stay home, but haven't quite found that job yet. But yeah, but yes, but one of those things that you just kind of, I think in marriage, it's easy to come into expectations, but at the same time, like, especially as you get married to someone, you have your wants and needs, right? And but at the same time, it's like, what can I do for you? So it's something I had to like, screw it. Like, I can learn to cook. We can learn to cook. We can get stuff together, So you kind of go through that early on in a relationship. And you kind of have that dynamic of, because like the person you marry, I think there's something I learned early on is like, the person you marry isn't the person you're going to be married to as the years progress. I think that's probably a big misconception probably in our culture, that people expect of like, hey, this isn't who I fell in love with. It's like, yeah, but you've also changed a lot too, and so you kind of find that way to continually pursue and continually learn, what the dynamics of a relationship need to look like, and as we both work our way through life. And so kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Rocco, that I hear in a lot of the couples that I work with, is the idea that people evolve and change, but you've got to be able to evolve and change too, right? And that's a process.
Yeah, which is good, because she wouldn't want to be married to young Rocco.
Absolutely. Caleb, how about you? Have you noticed any dynamics that you've brought into marriage, or has it been similar to what your parents were like, or different, or what have you noticed?
I think I kind of definitely see the tendencies from my dad had in the marriage. A lot of like good tendencies, not necessarily bad ones, but I just feel the overwhelming need to like not necessarily like protect, but to just like make sure that my wife and children are comfortable, whether or not that's, financially, of course, but also just like, hey, like, do you need some coffee in the morning or something? My dad was very much like that. He was very much like, hey, what can I get for you? Even like strangers, like, hey, you want a margarita? Like, I'll make you one, and all this stuff. And so I feel like I get that. Like, I need my family to just like to be comfortable, and and when they're not, I think it drains on me a little bit, probably a little too much, where I'm like, well, like, like I think I talked to a counselor about this previously, but like sometimes like I couldn't be happy unless like Rachel was happy. So if like she was in a bad mood or something, whether or not it had anything to do with me, that would just like weigh on me and I wouldn't be able to like enjoy my day because because I'm so worried about her or the kids or something like that. So I think my dad was very much like that, probably to an unhealthy point. And so I think that kind of trickled down into me as well.
No, that's some great insight. I love that. Yeah. Scott, I'm wondering if you have any insights to any of these questions, or if you wanted to have anything to bring in.
Well, I really identify with the last statement made by Caleb. That hits home. I mean, I'm going through some of that right now, buddy. And it isn't healthy. But it's awesome when you can, excuse me, when you can become aware that you're doing that. That's step one. It always seems like it's something we have to beat or fight or, and I don't know about you guys, but I mean, you're young. But I know me is that 55 years old, that's exhausting. When I took the job, ironically, at CCU, that's what rocked me the worst, is what Caleb was saying, because it was time to get out of where we were. But I was very, and it goes to my story and my woundedness and those things, but I was very concerned to a point of, and I was already burnt out and I was already tired, which is bad combo. But now I'm sitting there worrying if I did the right thing for my kids, for my wife. Did I make a mistake? And that haunted me. I mean, it affected me, what I was doing at work, and and so that stuff does need to be dealt with, man. I'm proud to hear when you said you saw someone about it, because that's huge. Don't go that stuff alone. I say that to everybody. That's why we're doing this thing right here, is you go that stuff alone, man, you are playing with something that's going to kick your ass. I mean, one way or another, it will come out in a funny ass way. If you don't face that stuff, it's not to be defeated. It's not to be fought. It's to be faced. And that's really cool, buddy. Keep facing that. I hope you are. The other thing I thought was neat, the last 4 guys we've had on, Jocko and I joked about, all CCU guys. The other 2 I didn't know that well, but you 2 guys, and I'll say this, and I'm not just saying this to say it, I'm not that kind of guy. But as tired as I was, and knowing that I was only going to coach 1 year, you 2 were some of the guys that were the main reason I was going to stay that year. Because you 2 are pretty special dudes, man. And I won't get emotional. I'll start laughing before I do that, just because of my insecurity. But I thought of this, that in saying that, if we want the truth here, and you guys hit on this, Rocco hit on this some too. Caleb called it doing life together. If we really wanted the truth, we have these 4 CCU guys on here. I didn't really know the other 2. I know these 2 it pretty good. I wish I'd have got to know them better, but just special guys from the short time we spent together, as I finish up that previous thought. But I thought what's neat is I told Jocko, we got to be careful not getting too many Christian guys on here, because, but this is what's neat about that. Your guys' faith comes into that. So that poses the question, how big is that? And I'm not talking about just Christianity or whatever. Just how big of a player is that in the marriage, man? I mean, how much are things influenced by grace, without us even knowing? And I'm not saying I have the answer, because I don't want to alienate guys that aren't Christians and things like that. I want guys to be able to come to the table here and say, hey man, I'm not doing well. But to hear that's a big part of the last 4 guys is good. I mean, that's something for someone to ponder on that. But I thought the biggest thing, what if we interviewed the wives?
Mm.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Wouldn't that be interesting? Because you could have a guy on here, oh yeah, man, yeah, we do this and that, and yeah, and then if
Yes.
she gave her opinion.
And then we'll see.
So those are just the things I thought of. But man, it's so good to see both of you guys right now.
Yeah. And so I want to ask you guys, Rocco and Caleb, when you think about, you could probably gone through some tough stretches in your marriage, right, where it's been difficult. What are some of the coping skills or maybe people you've talked to, or this could be physical health, this could be spirituality, it could be anything. Like, what do you guys do when things get really tough? Who do you go to? What kind of coping strategies do you use? I think that could be helpful for guys that maybe are really struggling in their marriage right now. Maybe they don't know what to do or where to go. I'm kind of wondering what's helped you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I think well, I started seeing a counselor pretty recently. I started seeing one before my dad had passed, and then stopped. And then once my dad passed, I started picking it up again with a different counselor. And that was good. I think it's good to have like a strong core of just like guys that you talk to on a regular basis. And I feel like I'm lucky enough to have, the baseball guys that I played with, Marshall and Rocco and even Matt, who lives down the street. Well, not down the street, but he lives close. Like the other day, he just texted me when I was sitting there in my living room, and he just said, "Look outside." And I just like looked out the window, and there was Matt just staring at me like a creeper, like he is. But I think it's good to have those kinds of people and be able to talk to them. And as I get older, I feel like it's easier. It wasn't always easy for me to just like open up and like talk about anything like, deep. It was always just like kind of surface level thing. So I think that's definitely the one of the big advantages that I feel like I have in my life is having those people that I can talk to.
Awesome. Thank you, Caleb. That's amazing. Rocco, what about you? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was about to say, Caleb and I have always, since college, we've always stayed well in touch, randomly calling each other. So we've always been close. But as far as having, just when challenges come, I feel like having people in your life that you can be just blunt with, right? I mean, there's so much fluff in the world. And I mean, it's so easy from the day to day just to not get into like the raw, like, hey, here's how I'm doing. And so it's easy to put on a face. So I think having a core group of guys and in marriage, also, if you're tying back about what we're talking about, like you're going to get what you give, right? So I mean, what you put into is what you're going to get out. So it may take a buddy to say, hey, here's the crap I'm going through, and then all this is like, hey, me too, right? So I think that's something that's helped, and just having people you can call to be there for, like Caleb mentioned, right? So I lost my mom a couple years after college, and it's a huge, just sore spot right before we had our first kid. And the big question of where is it at, and you see God's hand through it all, and it's like in the meanwhile, you see stuff come of like finding out stuff with Caleb's dad, and it's like having one of your best buddies go through something similar. It's like, it's, hey, there's a reason you go through stuff and you don't always see it right away. But to have a friend to go through similar things in life, has been huge. When the crap does come, right, which it always will, you're so it's just having someone and just people you could be, upfront with and let them know, which again, going back to marriage, having someone you could talk to and having someone in life that, you could be honest with, I feel like is huge.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I'm hearing, connection with friends, kind of a friend group, being willing to be vulnerable enough to be open and honest about what's going on with you. I heard Caleb saying like sometimes it might take where you need to go out and talk to somebody, like a professional could be helpful as well. Any other things that you guys would suggest for folks that are married that might be helpful, or things that you've done maybe just personally to be well that helps with the stress of being married?
Caffeine.
Caffeine. Okay. Lots of caffeine.
Oh, let's see. It's a great question. This is I mean, it sounds so freaking cliche with it all, but you hear, I heard early on, I didn't pay much attention to it, but love languages, right? As far as in a relationship, as far as what everyone receives. Well, I mean, go back to coaching, right? Screaming at a player is not always going to get the same response as, walking through stuff with them. But at the same time, there are players absolutely that need to be laid into, right? And so I think, everyone's going to receive things differently. So I feel like kind of looking into that. Freaking, my wife's a therapist. So I really have to tiptoe around how I go about things because she reads me like and I'm a bad liar. But at the same element, as far as going into like, it took a little bit. She's like, I don't need gifts. I don't need flowers. I don't need this. She's like, but I would love to, have quality time with you, and I want to have that. Like, that means way more of like having time set aside versus doing X, Y, Z. So kind of hearing that and learning about that as you kind of learn about your spouse too. Because it's not not every single person in a marriage has the X, Y, Z. Hey, here's how things, need to be done. Right. And it will change too, right. Especially with kids. But just having that, as far as that's something that has helped me a little bit. It's also really hurt me in some ways too, of knowing, how to go about things. But you learn, and you learn kind of about your spouse and, and what it takes. And that's helped me a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. And for those guys that don't know what the love language is, I talk about this almost constantly because everybody reads about it and brings it into session. But it's the idea that we often give love the way that we like to receive it. And often that can be a miss in relationships. Is that a fair summary, Rocco? We've got quality time, gifts, words of affirmation,
Acts of service.
We said words of affirmation. So I think we almost got them all. But anyway, the idea is that we often give the one that we want to receive, and our partner might say, hey, I don't want that. Don't do that. But the way you feel like you're connecting is not the way that they feel connected. So
for sure.
Absolutely.
Get to learn your wife is also what I'm hearing here.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we're getting close to time here, guys. Scott, anything else? Any final words you have before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, just a couple things, I guess. You ever think about after we had the last two guys on, which I really enjoyed as well, just the shipmate self thing is just so ironic in this topic, because the ship being the whole family, right? I mean, Rocco and his wife and the 3 kids, that's the ship. And then you talk about your shipmate, well, that's your wife, and then yourself and how important all those things are. The Navy talks about that in the aspect of the ship comes first, then your shipmate, and then yourself. As far as when something has happened, when it's going down, they give you that so you don't panic. But I find it ironic that the marriage thing goes both ways. It plays like, because it's very important that it goes both ways, because it's good that we always, in times of troubled times. So both of you lost a parent. I remember Caleb's situation arising just through the group as it was, or I can't remember how, but I just remember hearing about it, or we even maybe connected briefly on it. I just can't remember, but you may have told me, Rocco, but I wasn't aware, or I was and I forgot. So forgive me for that. But about your mom, and so recent, in the last or 2 years after you got married, what did you say?
It was about six years back. Yeah.
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a significant loss, man. like your story has been rocked.
Mhm.
We all know it's coming, but not like that, or not, and then some of us earlier in life get rocked in different ways earlier. And so, but I thought about the shipmate self, because then it plays the other way too. Like, you better, we talked about this last time we did the pod, but you better reverse that too from time to time and have a look at how you're doing yourself,
Mhm.
and then how that affecting your shipmate and how that ultimately affects the ship. So you need to reverse
Mhm.
that once in a while and have a good hard look. And I'm just amazed at how our stories, our personal stories, play out in this. Um, I was dealing with stuff yesterday that really was rocking me, and I won't get into the details of it, but it was tough, man. I mean, it was really tough. It was tough mentally. And I'm like, man, I've been carrying this baggage for a good 50 years.
Mm.
Um, and what do you do with that? Because that affects the shipmate and the ship. And so you look at that stuff and you think, man, you know, you get married and it's like the truth's going to come out. And this is what I'll end on, Jocko, and then you take it from there. But the truth, whether you're a Christian dude or not a Christian dude, or the truth is going to come out on who you are and what your stories are about. and and some of us feel the need to hide that. Some of us aren't even aware when that stuff starts brewing, whether it's in a form of depression or anxiety or anger or whatever you may have. I just think it's amazing when those personal stories start to come out. And we'll go this way, Jocko, maybe down the line, on the importance of waking up, the importance of becoming aware. Some faiths call it different things, but all religions have that terminology in there, in there somewhere, about that type of a process, the transformation of a man and a woman. And I find it amazing because I've had there's some guys in this group that it didn't work out, man. And I know for a fact, and 3 kids, married about 10 years, 3 kids, going to have to navigate those waters now of divorce, and go through that. And I tried to come alongside the young guy, and I think he did do this, but I tried to tell him, like, dude, do you know much of your wife's story? You know, because some of the stuff that was going on, and I know him enough, and he played for me long enough where I could tell, hey, dude, cut the shit, man. I know that this stuff takes two parties to screw up. You know what I mean? So yeah, she might be doing these things, and you mentioned one earlier, Jocko. The cooking thing was kind of becoming an issue, in the cleaning of the house, and some of those things. So he was, but I asked him, did she grow up that way? Like, did
Mhm.
she have those tools when she came into the marriage? Because she might not have grown up that way, man. And then to expect that, and you guys talked about expectations, to expect that of her is really actually unfair, man.
Mm.
So I teased my boys. I said, hey, listen, man, when you get into this deal, see if the mom's pretty. And I know that sounds terrible, but I see what the mom looks like when she's 50. This is hillbilly logic, okay? And then I said, and see if she's a good cook, and if the daughter spent time with her in the kitchen, if you like chowing down. Because if you don't care about that, then it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? But I was rocked by that. I grew up around a grandmother and a mother who cooked, and my grandmother and mother, their love language to you was cooking for you. That
Mhm.
was saying I love you, you
Mhm.
know. And I come into this, and my wife here, I'll give her credit, man. She and I, maybe she's not even listening to these pods, hopefully, but she I'll give her credit for this. She didn't grow up like that.
Mhm.
Um, but what's neat is she's worked at it. And then I've also come alongside, and I can do some of the cooking too, man. You know what I mean? And she makes some dishes that are really good. So it's just the expectations we have, our stories, how it all plays into this, that sometimes we're just not awake and aware that it matters. And so find out, man, like you guys talked about all along, communicate, find out where she comes from, find out. And I'm making this sound, you guys have got a way better head start than I have. I have woken up late, but I'm thankful that I'm waking up. I want to make, this was my prayer yesterday. I was on a hike and it was a meditation slash prayer slash crying out. I lived 30 years lost. I've lived the last 25 seeking and searching. And I thought, I want to make my last years my best. And so that's where I'm at. And it's so good seeing you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Yeah. And I think, as you know, being a therapist for many years, one of the things that I tell folks, is that people that want great relationships, they work to make those relationships great, right? So the idea that you kind of continue to date your significant other, right? That you continue to work on the relationship. I think that's absolutely essential. So I would put that out there as something just for guys to hear, is that to have an amazing relationship, you have to work at it, right? And it sounds like, Scott, you gave a kind of a good example of, hey, this one thing in our dynamic, we can work on it, we can make this better. And I think the other thing for guys to know is that you don't often, we have this idea that we come into relationships with great communication skills, great conflict management skills, right? But these are all skills that you have to learn and grow in. So I know when I was getting in relationships when I was younger, I was horrible at those things. And I was like, why don't these relationships work, right? I'm supposed to just magically be good at conflict resolution, putting my feelings into words, communication. No, these are not often things that are natural. And it's okay to talk to somebody and learn these skills, and you can get better at them. So there's a lot of hope. If you're somebody that wants to be great at a relationship, you can get better. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for being here tonight. This was a fun show. Again, as folks watching, please like our podcast and follow us if you want to subscribe. It helps us get more traction so more people can watch. But anyway, have a wonderful week, everyone, and we'll see you for the next pod.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.